You know, it's funny. In a world that's packed with smart screens and AI, you'd think the humble Blackboard is just, well, a relic, right? But what if I told you that simple black slab has a wild story? We're talking about revolutionary tech, serious engineering breakthroughs, and even a bit of political drama. Let's dive in. So before we get going, I just want to give a huge shout out to the source for all this. This entire explainer is based on the amazing research of Rogério Joaquim Santana. He's the one who really dug into the Blackboard's history, specifically in Brazil, and we're following his incredible work to tell this story. Okay, so this really is the big question, isn't it? I mean, we've got interactive screens, AI that can write an essay for you, so why on earth is this simple piece of wood or slate still a fixture in our schools? Well, as it turns out, the answer is way, way more fascinating than you'd expect. All right, our journey starts way back. We're not in Silicon Valley, we're in the 19th century. And we're about to see how the Blackboard kicked off a quiet but massive revolution right inside the classrooms of Imperial Brazil. Just think about how fast this thing took off. It was invented in Scotland around 1800. By 1814, it's all over schools in the US. And then, boom, just a little over 10 years later, it lands in Brazil. This all builds up to a really key date, October 15th, 1827. That's the day a new law basically guaranteed the Blackboard a spot in every single classroom. So you might be wondering, why this sudden need? Well, there was this new teaching method called mutual teaching, and it relied heavily on visual aids. The problem? The only things available were these super expensive posters imported from Europe. Totally impractical. Brazil needed a different way, and that's where the Blackboard comes in. It was cheap, you could use it over and over, it was the perfect, efficient solution. It literally made this new kind of mass education possible. And look, this isn't just speculation. We've got the actual historical records to prove it. This quote right here is from the official government proceedings in Brazil back in 1827. It's talking about approving a teacher's method of, get this, making the boys write on stone. That's it. That's the moment the Blackboard officially shows up in Brazilian history. Okay, so the Blackboard arrives, but the story is far from over, because it wasn't just about having a slab of rock. Oh no. What followed was this fascinating evolution, a real hunt for the perfect Blackboard, driven by what you could honestly call pedagogical engineering. And this whole quest was guided by 4 key principles, laid out by an educator named Luiz Alves de Matos. They sound simple, but they're absolutely critical. It had to be safe, it had to be stable, it had to be adaptable to different people, and of course, it needed to be big enough to actually teach on, amplitude, as he called it. So first up was the tripod model, and you can see the appeal, right? It's portable, it's adjustable, seems to check the adaptability box, but it had one major flaw. It completely failed on safety. I'm not kidding. The research shows these things were famous for just collapsing out of nowhere. Yeah, not ideal for a room full of children. All right, so attempt number 2, the reversible board. Super clever idea for that amplitude problem, right? You just flip it over and you've got double the writing space. Genius! Except it was still really wobbly. Trying to write on it was a shaky, vibrating mess. Then you get the guillotine model, which sounds a bit dramatic, but it had these 2 sliding faces. It was definitely more versatile, but man, can you imagine the maintenance? The ropes, the pulleys, and even with all that, in a big classroom, you were still fighting for space. The search continued. So after all these complicated designs, where did they land? You guessed it, the simplest solution was the best one. Just fix the board to the wall. It's totally safe, it's perfectly stable, it gives you the maximum possible writing space. It checked all 4 boxes. And that's why it became the standard we all know today. But, you know, that wall-mounted board created a new little problem. And the solution to that problem led to one of the biggest, most stubborn myths in the history of education. It's all about that little raised stage you sometimes see in front of the board. Okay, get ready for a major myth bust. The popular idea is that this platform was like a professor's altar, designed to literally put the teacher on a pedestal and reinforce their authority. Sounds plausible, right? Well, it's completely wrong. Santana's research is super clear on this. The reality was just practical. It was an ergonomic solution. That's it. It existed so that teachers could actually reach the top of the giant wall-mounted boards. It was never about power, it was about practicality. So we've got the perfect design, but, having a Stradivarius doesn't make you a violinist. You have to know how to use the instrument. And the research shows there's a real art, even a science, to using a Blackboard well. And these tips are just as relevant today as they were 100 years ago. The best teachers didn't just scribble randomly. No, they planned ahead. They divide the board into 3 sections to keep things organized. They use different colored chalk to make key points pop. And above all, they focused on writing clearly so everyone could read it. It really is a tool that rewards skill and technique. And all of this brings us full circle, right back to that question we started with. After all this history, all this innovation, is the Blackboard still relevant today in the digital age? Let's see what the research has to say. Now, this is what I find absolutely wild. People were asking this exact same question more than 50 years ago. This quote is from 1968. And you have Luis Alves de Matos saying, hey, with all these new electronic resources, he's probably talking about projectors and stuff, going back to the Blackboard might seem like an inconceivable regression. So yeah, this debate is not new. And that brings us to the big takeaway from Rogerio Joaquim Santana's work. His conclusion is crystal clear. The Blackboard is not the enemy of modern tech. It's not an either-or situation. It's actually a powerful, functional ally. It's a tool that can work hand in hand with digital resources to make teaching even better. So it turns out this humble tool is anything but obsolete. And that kind of leaves us with one last question to chew on, doesn't it? What other simple, old technologies are we totally underestimating in our day-to-day lives? What other Blackboards are out there, hiding in plain sight, just as useful and powerful as they've always been?